You know, history loves a martyr, but it has a cruel disdain for those who do the dirty work. On July 14, 1881, in a dark room in Fort Sumner, a man nearly 6 feet tall pulled the trigger and sent Billy the Kid's soul to hell. That man was Pat Garrett. That night, Garrett thought he had earned his place in the pantheon of American heroes. He thought the metal star on his chest would shine forever. But the truth is uglier than Hollywood wants you to believe. The shine of that star began to oxidize the moment Kid's body touched the wooden floor. Garrett didn't become the savior of New Mexico. He became the man who killed the joy of an era. He lived the rest of his days trying to explain why he shot from the shadows at a barefoot boy who was only holding a kitchen knife and asking, "Who is it? Who is it?" Today, we're going to open the coffin of this legend and smell the stench of regret. Make yourself comfortable, order a whiskey, but keep your eyes on the door. We're going to talk about the rise and miserable fall of Pat Garrett. Before we pull the rest of this story, hammer the nail into our door. Subscribe to the channel so you don't get lost on the trails of the Old West. New Mexico in the 1880s wasn't a John Wayne movie. It was a place of ankle-deep mud, the smell of cattle carrion, and men who hadn't bathed in months. Lincoln County was a powder keg. Factional warfare had left the soil rich in blood and poor in justice. In this scenario, Patrick Floyd Garrett emerges, a former buffalo hunter, card player, and a man who knew that on the frontier, the law was just a suggestion, unless you had the fastest revolver. He was elected sheriff with a single mission, to clean up the mess that the politicians couldn't fix. And that mess had a young face and a cynical smile. The official story that textbooks and penny pint literature of the time sold was that of a titan of justice. Garrett was a man of long silences and infinite patience. He wasn't a circus gunslinger, he was a strategist. The narrative was simple. New Mexico was under the heel of a juvenile devil named Billy the Kid, and Garrett was the only St. George capable of taking down the beast. He cornered the kid in stinking springs, in bone-chilling cold, waiting patiently until hunger and ice broke the outlaws. When he delivered Billy to the authorities, Pat Garrett was the most talked-about name from Washington to Santa Fe. He was the face of civilization, taming barbarism. But, as always happens in the West, newspaper ink dries quickly, and what remains underneath is rust. But tell me one thing, do you believe a man can hunt another with such precision if he doesn't know exactly how his prey's mind works? The question historians avoid is, what were Garrett and Billy doing together before the star entered the game? This is where the star's brilliance begins to fade. Before becoming a lawman, Garrett was known as Juan Largo. He and Billy the Kid weren't just acquaintances, they were drinking and card buddies in Fort Sumner. There were accounts that they shared the same table and the same female companions. When Garrett accepted the position of sheriff, he wasn't just accepting a job, he was accepting to hunt down a friend. And the way he did it, well, the irony of fate is cruel. On that fateful night in Pete Maxwell's room, Garrett didn't challenge Billy to a duel at sunset like in the movies. He hid in the darkness, sitting on the edge of Maxwell's bed, waiting.
Billy entered barefoot, knife in hand, searching for a piece of meat in the kitchen. Then he sensed a presence in the shadows and asked, "Who is it?" Garrett didn't identify himself. He responded with fire. 2 shots. The first went through the kid's heart. The second missed. Garrett left the room trembling, refusing to go back to see the body until they brought a candle. The big sheriff was terrified by the ghost of the man he'd just betrayed. From that moment on, the people of New Mexico made a decision. They preferred the dead outlaw to the live sheriff. And you, what would you do? Would you have a beer with the man who shot a friend in the back in the dark? Leave your comment below. Was Pat Garrett a necessary hero or an opportunistic traitor? Garrett expected a shower of gold and gratitude. He received scorn. The state took months to pay the $500 reward, and the people began to canonize the kid. The sheriff spent the rest of his life writing books trying to justify the murder, but nobody wanted to read the version of the man who killed the boy. He tried ranching, he tried raising horses, he tried politics. Everything he touched seemed to wither. He became a paranoid man, always checking the shadows, convinced that Billy's friends would come to collect the debt. Alcohol became his most faithful companion in the saloon, where he sat alone, watching the world change while he remained trapped in that July night. The irony of fate is cruel. Garrett became so famous for what he did that he never again had peace to be anything else. February 29th, 1908. Pat Garrett, now a 57-year-old man, indebted and with many enemies, was traveling in his wagon along a lonely road near Las Cruces. He stopped to urinate by the roadside. It was his last act as a free man. One shot hit him in the back of the neck, another in the stomach. The man who lived for the gun, who took pride in his stature and his star, died in the filth, with his pants down and his face in the mud. There was no glory. There were no heroic last words, only the silence of the desert and the smell of cheap gunpowder floating in the air. But this is where the story gets really dark. The man who confessed to the crime, a cowboy named Wayne Brazel, was acquitted within minutes. Why? Because in 1908 New Mexico, nobody cared enough about Pat Garrett to send him to his grave justly. Or was there something much bigger behind that ambush? The hidden impact of Garrett's life is that he unwittingly created the greatest icon of the West. By killing Billy in that way, he transformed a cattle rustler into a symbol of freedom and rebellion. Posthumously, Garrett was forgotten as a man and remembered only as a footnote in the kid's biography. To this day, investigators debate whether he was killed in a land dispute or as part of a political conspiracy involving professional assassins like Jim Miller. The truth? Pat Garrett died long before 1908. He died the moment the flame of that oil lamp went out in Maxwell's room. The lesson from Pat Garrett's life is that law and justice rarely go hand in hand. He fulfilled his duty, but lost his soul in the process. He teaches us that the cost of a legend is too high for those who create it. Sometimes the hunter and the prey end up in the same place, forgotten by time, covered by the dust of history. If you've made it this far, it's because you know the truth is deeper than a Western movie. What did you think of Garrett's ending? Did he get what he deserved? Don't forget to like and turn on notifications. In the next video, we'll talk about the man Garrett feared most, the hitman, Deacon Jim Miller, the man who may have pulled the trigger on that road. See you on the trail.